Hi everyone, welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio and tonight's YouTube Live. I am so glad that you've joined me. My name is Lisa Curcio. Tonight I am going to teach you how to heat emboss like a boss. Don't you love that play on words? We can thank Megan for that great title. If this is your first time watching, it is absolutely my pleasure that you have joined me. I think I'm going to be able to at least I should say, I'm hoping to inspire you. I'll be teaching you a few things as well. I'm going to give you all the ins and outs tonight about heat embossing. I'm going to give you tips about prepping the paper, the proper way to heat emboss. I'm even going to include tips on watercoloring. Hopefully, there's going to be lots of great tips for you to take away, even if you're a seasoned stamper. Now, there's a couple housekeeping items I want to go over with you if this is your first time here with us live. First of all, welcome back for those of you that are returning, and for those of you that are new, I'm so glad that you've tuned in. Megan Justice, you'll see her name in blue. She is my virtual YouTube assistant. And while my head is down at the stamp table and we're filming, oftentimes I can't catch your comments. So Megan is here to answer your questions and be able to help you with things that I'm going to miss. In addition to that, if you want to chat during tonight's live, which means you'd like to comment or interact with the others, it's going to be important that you sign into your YouTube account, which is your Gmail address. Without doing so, you won't be able to comment. It's not a Lisa thing, it's a YouTube thing. All right, I think we're ready. What do you guys say? I'm going to turn the camera down to the stamp table and we're going to get started. Give me just a second to get you guys all zoomed in here. There we go. And we'll get started. Got to make sure I've got my scrub all wet, and I think I do. I've got a piece of shimmery white cardstock here. I am not certain you're going to be able to see how gorgeous this paper is, but I'm using this specifically not just because I'm heat embossing, because you can heat emboss on any type of paper, but I'm actually going to be doing some watercoloring in addition to the heat embossing. So for those of you that are seasoned stampers, I'm excited to show you a little bit more than just the heat embossing itself. And I'm going to teach you how to create some variegated watercoloring. You're not going to believe how easy it is, okay? Let's get started. I'm going to turn my paper in the horizontal fashion because I find that's a little bit easier for my hand. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to prep the surface. Before you heat emboss, if you are looking to keep away those small flecks of embossing powder, so I've got gold embossing powder here, that's what I'm going to be using tonight. It is important that you prep the surface. And this is an embossing buddy. The embossing buddy has an anti-static powder inside of it that's actually going to repel the powder from sticking where there isn't ink. So it's really important if you're trying to keep those stray flecks from sticking on your paper. It's going to really help with that. So that's the number one thing, is to prep your paper. Then after that, you're going to choose your stamp. And I am choosing this absolutely gorgeous, elegant peacock. And this is from the stamp set called Royal Peacock, which is what we're going to be using tonight. Make sure you stick with me to the end because I've got at least 4 more cards to share with you tonight. They're all using a variation of the stamp set. I love to give you lots of ideas. Now, the Royal Peacock is also available as a bundle with coordinating dies. And quite frankly, I don't think you'd want one without the other. And we're going to talk about one of the missing dies that's out of here right now that we're going to use this evening. But I am loving this, and I've had so much fun with it. Now, if you're not a heat embossing fan, that's okay, because you can use it with the ink. Now, you're going to be able to find those products in the brand new Stampin' Up! Catalog. If you don't already have a demonstrator and you would like a complimentary copy, I'd be happy to send you one. Contact me at lisastampstudio.com. Photopolymer, which means it's a completely clear stamp. So if you were to stamp this in a colored ink, it's actually going to be very predominant from the other side, which is going to make it easy to use. And you can see how large this image is. I'm going to be using Versamark ink. This is a watermark ink pad. It will also leave subtle tone-on-tone colors on colored cardstock. So it has another use besides just using it for heat embossing. So I'm going to take that lid off and I'm going to ink this up. And you're going to see how I'm doing it face up. Simply because it is such a large stamp, I want to make sure that I'm not going to miss an area. So I'm being really cognizant to make sure I tap it good. And before I move that, I'm going to bring in my Pierce mat. And the reason I'm using this is, well, actually twofold. First, in total confession, I have some arthritis in my hands and in my joints, so I find pressing to be very difficult and challenging. So I find that the Pierce mat underneath my paper really provides some give from the bottom up. So I'm going to ink this up and I'm going to use that. The other thing is when you have these large detailed stamps, you might find it difficult to provide even pressure all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press my image on here. Lots of firm, even pressure. You're not going to be able to see anything because this ink is virtually invisible. Now, before I move the stamp out of the way, I should have done this first. I've got my embossing powder here. Let's go ahead and open that up. I'd like to work over a coffee filter, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And then I'm going to remove that. And then we've got our powder here. It's going to come to life in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and pick that up. And we're going to work over the coffee filter so that any excess we are able to put right back inside the jar. Now, some of you who have embossed a long time might be gasping at the amount of powder that I just placed on here. You know what? Don't chintz, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if you miss a spot and the Versamark tends to dry, then you've got an omitted area, which is quite frustrating. So go ahead and powder it. If you've missed an area, you certainly can go back just like I did before, and I can repowder it again and just tap it off. You're going to want to make sure that you do this quickly. You don't want that ink to dry. Now I'm going to set that off to the side, and then I'm going to come in with my heat tool. Now I'm going to talk about this quickly before I get started because I know it's going to be kind of loud. I've got one that's already finished, so I'm going to do a good portion of this, but I want to walk you through it so I can teach you some embossing tips. First of all, the heat tool has two speeds. There's a speed 1 and there's a speed 2. You're going to be able to find all these products in my online store at lisastampstudio.com. Speed 1 is a lower speed setting. I really like it for drying the paper, which we are going to use tonight, so I'll show you that as well. Speed 2 is the highest setting, so it's going to set the powder. I often get people asking me, can't I just use a blow dryer? No, it doesn't get hot enough. I even have people who ask me, can I use a toaster oven? Oh, heavens, don't do that. That's really, really dangerous. The tip on this gun is encased for two reasons, to protect your fingers, and the second is to help retain the heat in the nozzle, so that if you're doing multiple cards in a row, it's going to go faster and faster as time progresses. So I'm going to turn this up. You're going to notice that I'm going to start in one area at a time. And the best tip I can give you is not to move all over the place. Start in one area at a time. Keep your fingers out of the way. You're going to see what's going to happen is I'm going to keep the gun moving. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to take the risk of scorching the paper. Do you see how close I am? What's going to happen too next is as the gun starts to get hot and the paper gets warm, it's going to conduct heat. And that powdery finish is going to begin to turn what looks like a foily raised finish. So that area is done. Can you see that? I'm going to turn this now and I'm going to work over here. Like I said, this is a very large image. You're going to need to take your time because you don't want to miss a spot. Let me tell you what happens when you miss a spot. If you miss a spot and you don't notice it and you touch it, the powder will completely rub off and you'll have what I call like a little naked spot on your image. You're going to want to work one section at a time. Because the paper is getting warm, it's actually helping to spread the heat embossing across the cardstock. Isn't that beautiful? Can you see the shimmer? If you've never heat embossed before, this is a real wow. You may notice that you see heat embossing a lot on Christmas cards. That tends to be when people use it the most. But I'll tell you what, for images like this peacock, it is absolutely stunning. Now you might also be asking, can you overheat emboss it? And the answer is yes. Go ahead and ask me how I know that. You can. You can actually scorch the paper. It has a really kind of nasty smell, you'll know. The other thing is, if you're going to do another technique on top of the heat embossing, which is what I'm going to do tonight, it's very important that you let this cool before you go on to the next step. Make sure that your work surface is one that's going to be able to be heat resistant. That's really important as well. I want to make sure I point that out. This is the silicone craft sheet. If you've watched my videos before, you know I'm a huge fan of this product. The other thing about it is glue, liquid glue, hot glue, adhesive will not stick to it. But it's great to heat emboss on top of for short periods of time because silicone is resistant to the heat. You may have a pair of pot holders at your house that you use for the oven specifically for that. Again, made out of silicone. So this is a great way to kind of protect a work surface. If you're working on something that's metal or inside a pie plate, I am going to caution you, it gets hot from the heat tool. This is really, really hot. You don't want to put your hands on that until it's completely cooled, otherwise you'll be able to burn yourself. All right, I'm checking to see if this image is completely heat embossed, and it looks pretty good. So what we're going to do now is some watercoloring, and I'm actually going to move this underneath just in case I get a little zealous and I get watercoloring all over my work surface. I'm going to teach you a trick about watercoloring. Now the Stampin' Up! Ink pads, we've changed these, about a year or so ago, and they're a little shallower than they used to be. And the old style, we were able to squeeze the pad, and when we opened it, it would leave residual ink inside the well of the lid. Kind of like this, but not like this, because this was actually a couple drops of the refill for the ink pad that I put here. But a lot of you don't have the ink refills, and I'm cognizant of that, so I want to teach you another way that's a whole heck of a lot easier. So I'm going to leave my ink pad here on my work surface. I'm going to zoom out just, well, you know what? I think I'm going to leave it. I want to make sure you can see the detail of what I'm going to do. I am going to take a clear block, and I am tapping it on my ink pad to pick up a little bit of ink. This is a great way to watercolor if you don't have markers, maybe you don't have alcohol markers, you don't have colored pencils. All you need is either a paintbrush or an aqua painter. So let me tell you a little bit about what an aqua painter is. This is a self-contained paintbrush. Love it. So you unscrew it and you put tap water down inside, and then you screw the lid back on. You're going to get 2 in a pack. There's a brush tip, this one that's a little bit wider, and there's one with a little bit more shorter chiseled tip. The bristles are wonderful. They come to a nice point, so it's going to make it really easy for you to use. The other thing is you're able to squeeze water through the bristles to rinse it, which is a fabulous tool, so you don't have to get up from your table and keep rinsing out your brush. Now you might be wondering about a cup of water, and I'm going to talk to you about that. That's going to be one of the other tips I want to share with you this evening. Whenever I'm using these very dark pigmented color inks, I would tend to squeeze almost all the water out of here to get my bristles clean. So I'm going to cheat a little bit tonight because I don't want to be running to the sink while you're all here with me. I'm going to be rinsing my brush inside of here. Is there anything wrong with that if you're doing a whole bunch of watercoloring and dark ink? Absolutely not. Have a cloth nearby to make it easy for you to dry it off, something that you don't care about because obviously it's going to become stained. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to take a little bit of water from my aqua painter and I'm going to just squeeze a little bit onto my clear block. What I want to do is I want to make this a little bit watery. I don't want the pigmentation of here to be too strong that you can't appreciate the color in a watercolor fashion. The great thing about this is you're able to work in sections. So if you want something that's darker, you can come up here, lighter down here. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start by watercoloring in the head. And mine's a little bit wet, so I'm going to come over here and dab some of that off of my rag. And I'm going to fill in the top or the comb of my peacock and inside the breast, and then here some in the body. I am no artist by any chance. And I'll tell you what, I love this because it's foolproof. And I'm going to bring in some of the color down to here. If you have some missed areas, you can go back. The beauty of watercoloring with heat embossing is it provides a little bit slightly raised outline for you. It makes it easy to stay within the lines. Now what I'm going to do is just brush that off a little bit, and I'm going to come over here to where it's a little bit darker. And I'm going to come down here inside the feathers, and I am going to dot a little bit of blue inside of these areas. Now my head's kind of far away, so I'm trying to find where those all are. And I'm going to fill in these for accents. I am literally just touching the bristles to the paper. The beauty of the shimmery white cardstock is very much like watercolor paper. It is very resilient to water. If you were to use regular Whisper white cardstock, it's not. And if you put too much water on it, the paper will actually pill, which is never a fun thing. As the paper dries, you're able to go back over this and add more blue color to it and make it darker. You can certainly do that. All right, so that's the first step. I made this one kind of dark, but that's okay because no two feathers are alike, right? I'm going to use this because if I were to squeeze this and I clean out the bristles, it's going to probably empty that, and I don't want to run to the sink. So I'm using my little cup, and then I'm going to wipe this off here. I am going to save this in case we decide we want to add more color in a few minutes. Before I go on to the next color, because I'm speeding this up because you're with me, guess what I'm going to do? Heat 1. Speed 1 is going to be a lower setting, and it's going to help me to speed up the drying process of this ink. Now, I really got it wet here at the bottom, so I'm kind of hoping I don't oversaturate this. You know what? Stamping and talking at the same time sometimes is a challenge. You don't want to overheat this because then the embossed image will start to look flat. All right, so that looks pretty good. I've got an area down here that might be a little bit too wet. No, I think it's all right. All right, and this one that I made too dark. All right, I'm just tapping it. Is there anybody who can stamp neat? It's certainly not me. I'm going to get another clear block. If you don't have a different one, you only have one, clean it off on your scrub or your chamois or rinse it, and then you can reuse it as long as it's dry. This time I'm going in with the old olive ink, and I am going to tap some color on here again, just like we did before. And I'm going to set my ink pad off to the side because we don't need that now because we've got it here. And this time I'm going to add a little bit more water from my aqua painter. So I'm squeezing it. You see how the water's coming out? And I'm going to mix this. And again, I want it watery, but not to the point where I can't control it. So I'm going to kind of check it here. Okay, I think we're good. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drag that color down inside these feathers. Do you see those little scalloped areas here that I've embossed? I'm going to go right over the blue areas. Remember, when you mix colors, it's going to create another shade. So this blue and yellow together is going to make some purple tones, but I'm going to add a little bit more to that as well. Let's talk about these feathers. I think those need some color too. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to brush right over them. This is like watercolor 101. It requires absolutely no experience whatsoever. You're just going to work around those feathers. You're looking to keep some areas slightly white so that this looks like real feathers, like you can see through them. You don't have to worry about covering every inch of this. And you can see this is just a simple, simple project. I'm working down the color, down those gold embossed feather leaves and filling that in. Now, as pretty as this is on its own, it's going to get a lot better in just a minute. So I'm just adding some pigmentation and some color here to that peacock. Isn't that stunning? All right, I'm going to come back to my cup just because I'm not going to want to drain my aqua painter. I'm going to leave this off to the side again just in case I need to use it. And I've got one more color, and it's rich raspberry. So I'm going to open this up just like I've done. I'm going to tap my block right on top of there to pick up my color. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add another shade. But before I do that, we're going to do that one more step because we're speeding things up here on the video tonight. I'm going to go back to speed 1 and I'm going to dry this paper. I don't want to make the gun too hot or I risk embedding that gold embossing into the cardstock. So I'm going to work kind of quickly in a fashion here just to kind of dry up the paper. Do you see too how the paper curls a little bit? That's normal from the heat resistant. Don't feel like you've done something wrong. Typically, when it cools, it'll start to straighten out. And if it doesn't, then there's always adhesive. We can always make things work to our fashion. There's lots of paper crafting tips with glue dots and adhesives that work really, really well. Okay, so we've just warmed up that paper and we've dried that. That looks pretty good. I'm coming back over here to the rich raspberry and I'm taking my aqua painter again. And again, this time I'm adding a drop from my aqua painter. I'm just squeezing it to water that down. And here is where the magic comes in. We're going to come inside here and we're going to add a little bit of this color into the tail and down inside the comb and the scales here on the back with the feathers. And then I'm going to work around all these small areas where the feathers are. And you can see I'm not being neat about it. I'm just kind of slapping color on. We're looking for highlights and pigmentations. Those of you that have heat embossed before know too that where there is embossing, it's going to be resisted, which means it's not going to stick to the gold parts, but it's going to stick to the paper that's underneath. So let me just going to show you what's going to happen here in just a minute as soon as I get the rest of my color on. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to rinse out my brush one last time. As a tip for your aqua painter, please make sure that you pinch those bristles. You want those to a nice point before you recap it, because I don't know about you, there's nothing worse than a paintbrush that has a bunch of stray hairs here at the bottom, and then when you go to use it, you've got ink everywhere. I'm going to push that cup off to the side. I'm going to move my blocks, and then I'm just going to quickly heat set this on one more time. Again, if you're at home doing this, you can do a progression of these and set them off to the side to dry on their own. but I want some of that rich raspberry ink to penetrate that paper. And it's not going to stick where there's gold embossing. It's going to resist those areas. Do you see too what's happened here? This has turned almost purple, hasn't it? I'm going to take my rag, I've got a clean size here, and I'm going to dab. So what's going to happen now is all I've done is I've lifted the watery ink off the gold embossing, which has left us with this. Is that just not beautiful? So sharp and really, really easy. All right, let me set this off to the side and make a little room, because then I want to show you the die. As I told you a few minutes ago, the Royal Peacock stamp set does come with coordinating dies. And if you buy them together as a bundle, it'll save you 10%. I pulled out the die for this large peacock. Do you see it here? But I also want to show you something. I'm not going to die cut it on camera because I have one already done ahead of time, just so we don't have to bring in another tool. Here we go. But do you see all this white area here? And that's because this peacock, and that die specifically, was meant for these other layer of feathers to go on top of these. See, it's a photopolymer stamp set, which means these other layers of details can be stamped in another color over the top of these, what we call two-step stamping, which is going to give you two tones. Fabulous if you don't want to heat emboss. Fabulous even if you do. Wait till you see the other cards I'm going to share with you. So the die had to be wide enough to accommodate those extra feathers. And I have a card made with that I'll show you in just a few minutes. So the extra paper here kind of bugged me, to be honest with you. So I thought, okay, how can I fix that without doing a whole lot of work? So I came in with my scissors and I gave it really just a little bit of a haircut. So I came inside of here and I just kind of squiggly cut away what I didn't need. All right, I think you guys get the idea. Nothing fancy, I just kind of squiggled it back and forth. When I was done, I ended up with this. So you can see I cut away just the extra here to make it a little bit smaller. The die still did all the work. All I did was give it a little bit of a haircut so that it looked a little neater when I went to put it on my card. Now, if your card base is the same color as the cardstock, that's really not necessary because it's virtually invisible when it's tone on tone. All right, so let's move now and put the rest of the card together. So I'm going to slide that off to the side. And here I've got two pieces of gorgeous paper. Now this is going to be really, really shiny here on the camera, so you're going to have to forgive me. This is the beautiful Noble Peacock foil. Comes in 3 colors. This is the blueberry bushel. I know the reflection from the lights is incredible. You might need to use your sunglasses tonight. Isn't that gorgeous? And then this is one of the specialty papers in the Noble Peacock Specialty Designer Series paper. You're going to find those products in that catalog I just showed you a few minutes ago. I'm going to put these together, but I only need a small margin of them to be connected. So this is again where my silicone craft sheet comes into play. Not only can you do watercoloring on it and a little bit of heat embossing on it, it is great for adhesive. I am not going to need the full width of my adhesive runner on this. But if I had done it on my work surface, it's going to be sticky. I'm going to be fighting that sticky spot. But I can do it on my silicone craft sheet. So I can run just a little bit here. Any extra will fall here. It's going to rub right off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to eye these. And I'm going, about 1/8 of an inch. I'm hoping that's going to be good. I'm just going to very lightly tack that in place. And I'm going to lay that here because I know it's a little bit sticky on the back. It won't stick. Slide that off to the side. And then I'm coming into my card base. This is 4 1/4 by 11. I've scored it in half right before you joined me. I like to get that nice crisp edge, so I'm a really big fan of my bone folder. And I love this when I'm doing 3D projects as well. Fancy folds too. Oh, don't let me forget to tell you about fancy folds. I got a whole new series coming up for you. This is going to get mounted here. It looks like I could probably have moved this up just a hair, but we're going to go with a little bit of self-forgiveness tonight. And I'm going to add adhesive all around the perimeter of this. Remember, they're attached together here in the middle. Do you see it? But I just still want to be careful that I don't dislodge them. And again, with my silicone craft sheet, not only is the extra adhesive falling on it, it's also protecting my foils. Oftentimes, this stuff is really, really persnickety. And if you're too tough with your fingernails, it can scratch. So over here at the card base with my fold at the top, I always like to check. How many of you have ever done that? I know I have. I'm going to go ahead and mount this here. I don't want to press from the front because, you know, I don't stamp clean. I'm going to flip it over. I'm checking and I'm going to rub from here just to make sure that I can protect that foil and press that in place. The next thing I want to do before I get too far is I'm going to add some of this absolutely gorgeous reversible ribbon. It is beautiful old olive shimmer on one side, and it's got a turquoisey blue on the other side. So pretty. So you've got some options. It's not too shimmery that it won't work on masculine cards. I asked my husband. He was like, yeah, that's okay. I would take that. I was like, okay, good. So we're going to wrap this around the inside of the card base, which is one reason why I cut the card the long way, because you wouldn't be able to do that if the fold was here. And then I'm going to shimmy this over, and I'm going to make a bow all the way on the right hand side because I want to leave room now for my peacock. This card specifically, we're going to tweak just a little bit from another one I have that I'm going to share with you because I want to give you a couple options. So I'm working over here, and if you have trouble keeping that tension, add a glue dot underneath there. I'm going to try to do this with my head far away. That's always a challenge, especially when I'm trying to not scratch the foil. And let me see if I can bring my fingers in. Yep, there we go. And then I'm going to pull this tightly. Another trick to card making that's really important, don't be afraid to tie these tight. You don't want this to come undone when it's pulled in and out of the envelope. So pull it tightly. If the loops are too big, hold and pinch the knot and then adjust your raw ends to make the loops smaller. And then of course you're going to have to tension that up just a little bit, but that works. And then I'm going to come in here with my scissors and I'm going to give this a little bit of a haircut and make those shorter. I don't like to fuss with tiny pieces of ribbon, so I make sure I give myself at least 4 extra inches so that I can work with this without any trouble at all. All right, here comes our peacock. We're going to flip that over and we are going to use full-size dimensionals. I'm going to place one here at the head. It does fit. One in the body. And then we're going to work our way down. Don't be cheap with your dimensionals. You want to make sure that your card is good and balanced. We just put all this wonderful creation into this. And we also want to make sure that it's going to hold up as it goes through the rollers in the postage machine at the post office. I'm simply taking off the paper backings to these dimensionals, which reveals the other sticky side. All right, I think I've got them all. And now we're going to put this here. Now listen, this is not repositionable, especially on foil. I don't care what tip you've got. I've tried it all. I just always mar this. So I'm just going to eye where I want this. And then when I'm happy with it, I'm going to tack that in place. This card is slightly different than the other one I made for you because I want to give you a variation. And that is this. I stamped a greeting from the exact same stamp set that says, "You are incredible." You can overlap it. You can put it off here to the side. I'm going to add one more dimensional because I wasn't sure where it was going to go when I started this. And then I think we're going to do off to the side on this card. I'm going to show you the one without it. Obviously looks like this. So greeting or no greeting, entirely up to you. I would love to know which one of those is your favorite. Here is the one with the greeting we just created. I'm pulling out the other one. Here is the one without it. Leave me a comment. Which one do you like better? And I know you've got a lot of reflection. Now, I promised you 4 more cards with this exact same bundle of product, and I have those. So let me push these off to the side for right now, and let me pull out those other cards for you. These cards are all part of this month's card making kit, which means when you place an order in my online store of $50 before shipping and tax using the exclusive kit host code before Saturday, which is June 15th, you're going to get all the pre-cut supplies to make a total of 8 cards, 2 of each of the designs I'm going to show you here. Do you see the extra feathers that are on this one that we talked about on the previous card? And you can see how well the die fits inside there this time. So I'm going to send you the cardstock, the foils, the designer series paper. You're going to get a video to stamp right along with me at home to make a total of 8 cards. 2 of each of these designs I'm showing you here. In addition to the video, I'm also going to send you a PDF tutorial. So if you prefer to read instructions along with pictures, I've got you covered. My tutorials have multiple pictures of each card, step-by-step instructions, cutting dimensions, and a complete supply list. The great thing about the tutorial is you're able to copy these layouts for other projects as well. And then check out this. Those of you that are either new or seasoned, it doesn't matter. My video is going to teach you all kinds of amazing tips with heat embossing. So the kit's going to include all the pre-cut supplies to make a total of 8 cards, 2 of each of the 4 designs here. Now let me flip the camera around. The last day to order your card kit is this Saturday, which is June 15th, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have a promised mail date no later than June 22nd. It is imperative that you use the exclusive card making kit host code. It's the only way I know that you're entitled to the free pre-cut supplies. That's a mouthful, the free pre-cut supplies. Okay, but if your order's big of $150 or more, do not use the host code because I want you to be able to redeem the free Stampin' Rewards, which is free product. You'll see it prompted when you place your order. But just let me know by sending me an email that your order was intended for the free card kit, and I'll make sure that you get the free pre-cut supplies. I also include envelopes and an extra bonus. All of my customers who order their card kits get a private invitation to an event called Live with Lisa. During that event, I do numerous live demonstrations, kind of like what you've seen here tonight. They get a huge bundle of tutorials, 8 different projects. In addition to I give them product prize patrol, or I give away product. I hold the event in a private Facebook group, but if you're not on Facebook, don't worry, that's okay. Just let me know when you place your order. I can send you the video recording and the tutorials via email, and of course your name is still in the product prize drawing. So the Royal Peacock Bundle, I'm reaching over for it because I've thrown stuff way over in the corner now, are over here. This is the stamp set and the bundle. If you want your cards to look exactly like mine, I have a complete list of all those supplies over at lisastampstudio.com under the online classes tab where it says card making kits. And you can see everything there. The host code's there, the ordering instructions, everything. I made it nice and easy. I want you to stamp with me from home. I love pre-cutting these and I love preparing them for you. If you have questions about the kit, by all means, please reach out to me. But I think that's it. Couple things. If you have enjoyed tonight's video, please give it a thumbs up here on YouTube. Share it with your crafty friends as well on other social media platforms or by email with your friends. In addition to that, if you subscribe for the first time, make sure you click that small bell icon that's next to the subscribe button. That's going to give you notifications of when I'm live here on YouTube, as well as when I upload a new video. Now, I'm going to be back live with you on Monday, June 24th. You want to put that on your calendar. I was just checking to make sure that's the right date, because it is going to kick off a brand new fun fold card making series that you are not going to want to miss. I have been a designing crazy woman coming up with all kinds of fun fold card ideas for you. And I'm going to kick off the first card live with you right here on YouTube on June 24th. Megan, thank you so much for all your hard work and interaction tonight. Everyone, I'm so glad that you were here to join me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.